Welcome to This Week in Vegan Instagram. This week we have a great lineup, starting with Vegan Goes to the Rodeo. Yay! Alright. This is your host, Carnivore is Vegan. Please like and subscribe so you can support my channel. Thank you in advance. Alright, I have been getting into TikTok lately. For those of you who actually follow me on Instagram, you've probably noticed my stories come from TikTok a lot, and it's just a fun place. And if you aren't familiar with TikTok, there's things that are called stitches or duets, where you kind of stitch your own videos or your own narrative onto the end of existing videos. And I've been having fun with that. So here's one of my stitches that was in my stories that I thought was funny.
Looking tired, here's a top tip from Santa Elena on how to utilize the rest of the vegetable before you throw it away.
Ah, that didn't show my pig.
Looking tired, here's a top tip from Santa Elena
Try
on
that
how
again.
to utilize the rest of the vegetable before you throw it away.
That's what I do with my old broccoli, or really any broccoli. My mother-in-law eats broccoli, but she mostly eats all her vegetables, so she doesn't end up throwing it away. That was a box we got from the grocery store for free, but I just thought that was a funny addition onto that, because that's the proper use of broccoli. I don't know why my mother-in-law eats broccoli. It's terrible shit. Anyway, moving on. I just never know when vegans are being serious or not, but this guy was saying that this was in a conversation with Michael Jordan eating steak before his matches, before his games, and this guy was saying, "Oh, that guy's a dumbass. He doesn't know what he's doing." It's like, Michael Jordan, the best basketball player ever in history, and you're saying he's a dumbass. And I said, well, what about this guy? He's had 80 world records, and the guy says, "Oh, poor lad, imagine how much better he would have performed if he'd had a proper diet instead of that crap." It's like, are you serious? I just never know when these guys are being serious or not, but it's just getting to be ridiculous, all their stupid comments. I don't know if you've been following the mouse plague in Australia, but that's a direct result of grain farming, which mostly in Australia at least goes to humans, because most of their cows and animals, or at least their cows, are grass-fed. And there's even a study, I didn't include it in here, but I'll include it in my Perpetual link sheet below, in the summary below, of there's a study called The Slaughter of the Singing Sentients, where he goes over the numbers of how much more ethical beef is than eating a vegan diet, and it turns out that about 25 times more animals are killed for a vegan diet in Australia than eating beef, and his conclusion is that eating large ruminants is way better than eating a vegan diet if you're concerned about morality. And I don't know if you read this part in the middle, which is why I screenshotted this in the first place, is I guess PETA just wants everyone to hate them because there's a plague going on. There's millions and millions and millions of animals. People are overrun by these mice everywhere, getting into everything. And PETA says that farmers shouldn't kill these animals. It's like, what? Are you serious? So I guess PETA just likes to be hated. I'm not sure why, but they don't have a very good PR campaign, I guess. Moving on. So here's some conversations I've been having on Twitter, and these vegans are just getting really ridiculous with these arguments that they make. And there's two arguments that they've been making that are just completely ridiculous. So the first one is that you have to demonstrate now that more suffering occurs on cropland than wildland. And it's like, no, we just have to show that you're doing the killing, because I don't think anybody is saying that even if cropland has less suffering, that it would be better than wild land. So where they're getting these arguments, I don't know, because if you take that to its logical conclusion, just killing off all the wildlife would cause the least suffering, because we'd have an immediate burst of suffering, a large spike in suffering, and then it would end because all the animals would be dead. So if you really want the least amount of suffering, then just kill off all the animals. Just exterminate them all. Then we'd have less suffering. But I don't think that's what anybody's saying, but that's the logical conclusion of this argument, is that it's not them causing the suffering that's the problem, it's the suffering at all that's the problem. So just kill everything off. Problem solved, no more suffering. So it's just kind of a ridiculous argument. And then this other argument is, it's literally protecting our food supply. It's different to murder for taste pleasure. For one thing, of course, we're not killing for taste pleasure for meat. It's for nutrition. And secondly, these are not people that are like armed killers taking your food. They are just innocent, hungry beings. So if you can kill for your food supply, then why not just enslave animals and stop indiscriminately killing wild animals? It doesn't really make any sense. He says we have a right to feed ourselves. It's called self-defense and defending property. Well, if it's that big of a problem, then let's just take animals that are docile and make them our food. It just makes far more sense than indiscriminately killing tons and tons of different animals that we don't even know what we're killing, and it could be endangered species, all of that. So these arguments just don't make any sense. And you're not really defending your property. You're defending your property against hungry innocents. I mean, that would be a war crime if we did that. If we dropped poison onto humans, it would just be a war crime to do something like that. So then this guy, he made an account to parody me. He called himself Carnivegan, but now he's calling himself Carnivore Isn't Vegan. And there was another parody account that was contra me. I forget what they were calling it, but I blocked him because he admitted that he was a troll, and this guy's pretty much a troll. But now he has all these laughy emojis. So show me the data that shows a large number of field mice who have escaped from crop death, then get killed by predators. Who the fuck is doing that research? Well, that's been done. So he just doesn't even know what he's talking about. This is it's just a crack up when they say, like, we don't know what we're talking about, and you're just that we're idiots. And then there is research on that, because the argument was that he's saying crop deaths are a lot less than they say because the mice actually escape, because mice aren't so stupid that they're just going to sit there and wait for the harvester to run over them. But the problem is that they lose their habitat and then they get killed by predators. So yes, this has actually been done. So it's just kind of funny that you can give them a counter that's exactly the study that they asked for. Like, who the fuck is doing that? Well, people did that. Yes, they really did. And that's Stephen Davis used that argument, used those kind of back of the napkin calculations, and then animal visuals of the morality of 1 million calories also uses that. So they like to say that Stephen Davis was wrong in his calculations because the mice escaped, but they don't count that they lost their habitat and got eaten by predators. Then the other argument, there's just so many dumb arguments these days that they seem to be stretching because they can't really find any good arguments against our arguments about crop deaths. And then this guy says that the animal deaths only count if it's intrinsic to the growing of the plant. So he's saying, of course, it's intrinsic to kill animals to eat meat, but it's not intrinsic to kill animals to grow broccoli. So my argument is that, for one thing, this means it's about them and not the animals, because they're saying they don't care whether the animals are actually killed or not. They're saying it's only important that it's not intrinsic to the thing, so it's more about how they feel. But in any case, this also leads you to the conclusion that dairy and eggs would be fine, because eating dairy and eggs, it's not intrinsic to dairy and eggs that the animals be killed. So therefore, according to this argument, you could be vegetarian, and that would be perfectly ethical. Of course, they're going to disagree with that. The funny thing is, again, this is a vegan guy saying this, but then we go to Nikki Aspie and other vegans, and they're saying, of course, that this is a ridiculous argument. What actually matters is what happens in these industries. So they're getting those same arguments from vegetarians, that it's not intrinsic to dairy and meat, to dairy and eggs, and these vegans are saying that's ridiculous. Of course, it matters what's intrinsic. Whether it's intrinsic or not, it doesn't matter. It's just about what actually happens. So they're disagreeing with other vegans making that argument. So they can't even agree on their own ethics. But it's just an excuse to get out of taking responsibility for their own deaths. They want to pin all the deaths onto us, but then ignore crop deaths. I made it onto Reddit's Vegan Circle Jerk. This is my article on carnivore is vegan. And of course he's being sarcastic. Attention vegans, you've been lying to yourself if you think you're a true vegan. The only path to true veganism is through carnism. And then all they do on the whole comment section is just disparage it, but they don't say anything about... They don't actually disagree with anything with the stats. They just say, oh, that's full of shit. So I thought that was kind of funny. I won't go over what they said. You can read that if you want. You can pause it and read it if you want. But what I thought was super funny is, as I was reading some vegan sites on Reddit, I got this ad. Have a nice bug-free home office by contacting Orkin, and then... on Reddit, they're saying, we want tasty food, but without violence. Why is that so hard to understand? So I just thought that was quite ironic about having an Orkin ad while I'm looking through vegan propaganda on Reddit. James Aspie says, you know what's more insane than slaughterhouses is meat eaters walking around acting like their lifestyle doesn't cause any harm. I guess that's a Gary Yourofsky quote. But that's exactly what vegans do. Exactly. They constantly do that. I'm always trying to tell them that they cause harm, and they absolutely ignore it. So, this is Vegan Cyclist, and apparently he took his kids to the rodeo without even a single mention of the ethics of rodeos. I'll let you watch a little bit. This was in his stories.
California. Come on, Jesse. All right. We got Hippie Russell with everybody. Do you want them to get a seat? This man.
Boom, boom, boom.
So, Vegan Cyclist is back cycling. He's doing 100-milers, and he's all better from his hip, his broken hip. So, doesn't seem to be having any problems, but he still has not advertised his bone density score, if he got one. I don't know if he did or not. But I thought it was interesting that he took his kids to the rodeo, and no mention of the ethics of rodeos. But good that he's letting them do things that are normal. I'm at least happy to see that. Danielle Raw and Wild. Look at how horrible and thin she looks. And of course, I'm sure she thinks she looks absolutely fabulous. Yipes. She looks like a concentration camp survivor. She looks awful. But she's starting to have problems. She's got swollen feet. Of course, the acidosis wants to come out. It's just detox. Looks pretty bad. That's not healthy. She's like, what? She's got to be in her very, very early 20s. And she's already looking like an old lady. Interestingly, she looked up, this is not what I looked up, this is what she looked up, swollen ankles protein deficiency. And she put on there, let's talk about this. Share if you have any thoughts. I do miss a daily green boost and dense green juices. Is that what she thinks is going to get protein for her? I don't know. But most of you, I think, know that I'm a registered nurse and used to work in ICUs and ERs. And one of the few times we ever gave protein was people who had edema and who had low protein in their blood. And we would give them protein powders and such. And that was just a very rare occasion that we would do that. But most of those people would have edema from the low protein. So this is a real thing. Like, I think she's a sick girl. I hope she decides to start eating some meat, but I don't know. She looks pretty sick. Next up is those annoying vegans, and they are talking about gaslighting. Gaslighting is a form of psychological abuse that makes one question one's sanity, perception of reality, or memories. And this is super interesting because their question, so they give an example of meat eaters trivializing, hence gaslighting, vegans. But the question is gaslighting to begin with. Why is it ethical to kill animals for taste pleasure? Well, that's just gaslighting right there, because we're not killing animals for taste pleasure. We're killing animals for nutrition. So they start out with a loaded question that's essentially a form of gaslighting, because it's it's trivializing your need for nutrition right there. And then they have another example that's called withholding, refusing to engage in conversation by pretending not to understand. Why is it ethical to kill animals for taste pleasure? It's not. See, they're pretending not to understand that we eat meat for nutrition and not for taste pleasure. Sure, it tastes great, but that's probably an evolutionary adaptation to meat eating because it's highly nutritious. So they're the ones that are... they're literally in the question is built-in gaslighting. I just thought that was funny. And then on a TikTok, I did another stitch with not my own original video, but I added someone else's video to make this funny. So this is a stitch of two different people's videos, with the first person saying, hey, you want to see an example of gaslighting? And I think she's a therapist or something like that. And then I added in an example of a vegan gaslighting meat eaters or ex-vegans.
If you've ever wanted to see an example of gaslighting, watch this.
No, you were never vegan. If anything, you might have been plant-based. And I don't think you even know what veganism is now. Veganism is a philosophy, and it's a lifestyle that seeks to avoid animal exploitation for human animals and non-human animals. And so then you came to the conclusion that because you were pretending to be vegan and you noticed that these other vegans cared about animals and were anti-animal exploitation, you couldn't handle that. You just couldn't handle that, and you realized actually you were plant-based.
So that's just a perfect example of vegan gaslighting. She's just trying to make you question reality by saying, oh, you were never vegan, you never really cared. But she would agree with you that our health justifies killing animals. But when someone's health declines and they start eating meat and get better, that's not justified for whatever contradictory reason they can come up with. But they are huge gaslighters. That's the whole MO of the cult. It's gaslighting is a very big tool of cults, and vegans do that extremely well. Zoe Rooster, she's almost turning 19, and she's still caught up on a hen that died years and years ago. She's got I don't know if it's a nonprofit, but it's a organization that she tries to help animals called Rose's Law. Oh, she's trying to get animals to have equal laws as humans, to have animals have human rights, essentially. And she's calling it Rose's Law, and Rose was one of her hens that died many years ago. It's like, if you can't get over a hen's death, I think you just kind of have a childish mentality. It's a bit crazy that a 19-year-old in college is pining over the death of a hen many years ago. I think it's quite childish. This was a guy we were just having a conversation about how animal deaths, there's more animal deaths in plant agriculture than there is in at least beef agriculture, because of the crops fed to the monogastrics like pigs and chickens. But beef gets very little grains fed to it and is mostly pasture raised. And this guy said he worked on a beef farm and a macadamia nut farm, and there were tens of thousands of rats killed to provide nuts for the farm. In palm oil manufacture, that's the same thing too. There's just tons and tons of rats. That's it for today, and I have a little farm video that you might like. It may or may not have any music to it, but the music makes it really funny. And this is our littlest piglet, not our littlest at this point. We have another set of piglets, but he's the last one of a set of litter that he's awfully friendly, so we're going to sell him last. And all his brothers and sisters got sold, and he kind of runs to us every time we go to feed his parents. We've left him with his parents, and he's just super funny. We call him Bobby Barrow. Barrow means a pig that's been a male pig that's been castrated, and we called him Bobby Barrow. So hopefully it'll have music. If not, YouTube strips out music that has copyright protection. So it may or may not have music, but it's really cute with music. So I'll leave it and not make any commentary.
Very cute puppy, yup. I'm just a very cute puppy, yup. I'm just a very cute puppy, yup. I'm just a very cute puppy. Woo. I'm just a very cute puppy. Woo. I'm just a very cute puppy. Puppy, tap puppies, tap puppies, tap puppies, tap I'm just a very cute puppy.
All right, that's me and Bobby Barrow are saying goodbye. Please like and subscribe, and hopefully you enjoyed this week in vegan Instagram, vegan social media, and I'll see you hopefully next week. Take care. Have a great June.